sustainable transportation options like transit, walking, and biking. Thanks.
Good afternoon, I'm St. Clair Williams. I'm a senior planner with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. Expertise is in development review, also experience in urban design, long-range land use planning, and zoning. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Mike Sponseller. I'm with NAI Michael, and my focus areas are development and advisory work around mixed use and commercial development. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carrie McCarthy. I'm with the Montgomery County, Maryland Planning Department, and my expertise is broadly planning, real estate, and urban economics.
Hi all, Colin Kuntz, urban planner and landscape architect with BKB Group, which is a multidisciplinary design firm.
Okay, and then we have one person who was on the team who was here yesterday, but she woke up in the morning and she had to give birth to a baby. So Kendra is not here today, but she's here in spirit. So. Okay, so the assignment that we had, and we'll just go through this stuff really quickly. This is what the city asked us to take a look at as we're going forward. So identify strategies for reinvestment in Gordon Road, explore the feasibility of public-private financing for the materials yard, which we're renaming the Public Services Center, PSC. So you'll hear that a lot. And enhance multimodal connections, WOD and the trail, West Falls Church Metro Station, and then other areas close by. Some of the specific questions in terms of public-private partnerships, what models are out there that the city can take a look at, to kind of give them a toolbox to be able to do that kind of development, because it's not always easy, but it can be done. Land uses, what are the uses that are appropriate here? What are the uses that Falls Church needs to retain that's present in the area now to be successful going forward? Transportation and connectivity, we talked about that a little bit, but how do you enhance multimodal connectivity, multimodal travel? Equity, how do you expand the existing homeless shelter and then promote equitable development so that, because Falls Church is such a welcoming city that I think that's kind of a core value for you. At least that's what we sense. And then regional coordination, what are the opportunities for working with other jurisdictions, specifically Fairfax County, going forward? Okay, so we want to thank all of these stakeholders. Don't hold your breath that we're going to read everything off, because it ain't going to happen. But we want to thank you all because, giving of your time yesterday and all 50 or 60 people that participated in the 6 focus groups, it really made a big difference in our understanding of what's going on in Falls Church, what people want to see, and even though some of the visions were somewhat disparate, that's okay. Having that feedback, and we're especially appreciative of the walk around that we got from Falls Church staff. That was really very, very helpful. And then, in the final report, there'll be a more comprehensive list of the specific things that we talked or heard. But here's some of the bigger takeaways. So you just look at that real quick. And then now. Okay, so in terms of what you're going to be hearing this afternoon, we've divided up into teams for various subject areas. And what you're going to see first is context analysis, what's going on around the area and within the area. Second thing is a framework plan. And this isn't meant to be like a land use plan or anything like that. It's really intended to be, a framework for how development can go forward. Let's see, public-private partnerships. Obviously, that's something that's really important. Governance. we see there's opportunities to organize various projects going forward in specific ways, and we've talked about that. Implementation, yeah. What's the point of doing a plan if you can't pull it off? So we're going to show you an example of an implementation matrix that will be included in the final plan. And then the last part of that is going to be 6 takeaways. Six.
There you go.
6 takeaways that we think are really the core of the recommendations of our work over the last 2 days. And like I said, we really appreciated all the effort everybody's put in to support us. It was great. And if anybody needs sweets, there's a ton of them in the back. So it's enough to keep Dennis in business for a year. So feel free to go on back if you want to. So now we're going to present the context analysis.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so like Robert said, Mike and I were tasked with sort of setting the stage, if you will, thinking about an orientation and or a reorientation to the site. Go ahead, Mike. I think, go ahead. I think what Robert said in terms of the stakeholder feedback from the city, business owners, citizens, this bubbled to the surface throughout all the conversations we then had as a panel. And I'm just going to read it. I think this sort of sets the stage for the future of Golden Road. There is truly great enthusiasm from stakeholders and city leadership to invest in Gordon Road Triangle in a way that creates more equitable housing and improves multimodal transportation while reimagining the existing public works facilities. So again, sort of at a high level, this is the vision. This is the setting the course for what not just us as a panel, but we think with the city can happen at this site. So again, I know we know a lot of this information, at least on the front end, is not new, but I think this will land on the internet. So we just wanted to make sure we were explicit with everybody. So again, from the site introduction, you can see it outlined here to the north, bound by West Broad, Route 7, to the south by the W&OD Trail, and to the west, Shreve Road, and again, secondarily by Gordon Road there as well. Digging slightly deeper when we look at the current zoning and then future land use to the left, current zoning, currently zoned to light industrial with the mixed use overlay. And so as we think about the future of Gordon Road, zoning definitely will come into consideration. Will there need to be a rezoning application filed? So again, looking at current and then future land use zoning maps was part of what the panel did on the front end as we thought about sort of what that vision can look like for the site. So as we dig slightly deeper, right? So one of the unique, we think, opportunities of the site is the current mix of uses. And you can see here, and hopefully in the back, you can see on the right are we think, relatively exhaustive list, but from the city's perspective, we're parking buses, we have a recycling center, the warehouse, the actual Department of Public Works, a hypothermia shelter, the police impound lot. We have a couple examples of the auto body shops, Caliber, Smokies, FC Auto, Paramount, Bayer, Volvo, Kia, U-Haul, and then the little parcel there with Sweet Rice. So again, we think, and you'll see soon, this is one of the unique opportunities to synthesize and bring together these landowners on behalf of the larger Gordon Road Triangle, along with the city of Falls Church. So now digging a little bit deeper from a site detail perspective, one of the things that we as a panel have discussed, and you'll see details in a little bit, is one of the recommendations to the city will be think about and consider developing and investing in your parcels first. We think this is the site, these 2 parcels are the catalyst for the larger Gordon Road Triangle. We think this has to happen first, and everything will flow from that. So what this shows is the yellow circle is the current Public Works building, right? So thinking about what that parcel will look like, and then sort of just to the bottom right here, the current mulch and salt current, what that looks like. And then you can see here, we really feel strongly as a panel that starting with these 2 parcels creates that synergy between the city and the landowners. We heard directly from the business owners and landowners yesterday that they are willing to enter into this project with the city. They just need the compelling vision from us and the larger plan for Gordon Road for them to come fully on board. And we think, again, from the city's perspective, starting with your parcels will really set that course in motion. I think we have to be realistic as we enter into this process. What are the current site constraints for Gordon Road, right? And a lot of these constraints you will hear propose solutions to later. So there's currently poor bike pedestrian infrastructure. The picture on the left is looking down the WNOD trail at the back of the Gordon Road Triangle site. So you can see here, right, there is no current connection between the trail and the site. The site currently is only served by Gordon Road, so you can see the second picture with what we're calling subpar pedestrian connectivity, very narrow sidewalks, which again become even more narrow as the cars are parked. It is difficult to cross Broad Street safely and conveniently. And then again, the driveways and really individual curb cuts create conflict for people walking and biking. One of the recommendations you'll see later and more details around the tree canopy. There's very little tree canopy currently on the site. And then we have identified areas of frequent flooding, which again inform some of the vision pieces of what you'll see later.
All right, having outlined the process and the task at hand and understanding the current status of the Gordon Road Triangle, we're going to start to move forward into the feedback that we got from our various focus group members and area stakeholders and how we analyze that in a few different ways and are utilizing that and looking to implement that in the planning process going forward. Just from a high level, some of the outlining or outstanding items that we continue to hear were a focus on green space, improved connectivity in and also around and through the site, equity, creating equal access to any reinvestment that occurs in the site, the need for housing, and that is housing at various levels. But also, and really most importantly, this is currently an industrial area that serves a lot of needs, both for the city and then also the city's residents. So we want to make sure that we're accommodating for these uses moving forward. Green space, obviously, the site has the fortune of aligning with the WNOD trail, a very heavily utilized bit of cycling infrastructure that stretches throughout the region, and also being at the gateway of the city. So our plans here are to utilize that access point, be cognizant of some of the sensitive environmental areas on the site, and pull some of those same elements into and through the site, creating natural elements throughout the revised plan. Connectivity, obviously, again, the site fronts on Broad and WOND and Shreve Street, but the connectivity that is currently in place is in need of a lot of revision. So what we wanted to do is focus on, automotive, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic, again, through and around the site, and connect it not just to and around the site, but also to the metro location to the west of the site. Equity. Obviously, any plan, any reinvestment plan, such as the one that we're contemplating, there's always the threat of displacement and lack of equal access to the reinvestment plan. So we just want to make sure that we're focusing on that as a priority. Housing. Obviously, housing is in great need throughout our region and would be a crucial element of the plan that we would like to see put into place. But we just want to make sure that housing is provided in a range, not just from market rate housing, but also workforce, affordable, attainable, and then also a heavy focus on, the city currently has their hypothermia shelter on the, in the triangle. And we've heard a lot of feedback about interest in improving and modernizing and expanding that facility. So we want to make sure that's a focal point. Finally, again, the industrial. We are contemplating different ways where the industrial use is not just the DPW facility that is so crucial to the city, but also some of the private sector industrial uses, some automotive fabrication, and other light industrial uses that the city really depends upon. And last but not least, retail. Retail in any sort of mixed use plan like this needs to be addressed. Obviously, there are going to be needs for new residents, destination retail destination retail opportunities for surrounding residents. So we want to make sure that balances the needs of the community with the city's comprehensive planning in place. And next up.
Afternoon. A little shorter. So you've heard us talk about this framework plan idea, and I just wanted to take one moment to kind of explain what we mean by framework. What we were just talking about a minute ago of the city services and the ability to unlock redevelopment of those and improvement of those spaces first and immediately to address those critical needs. We believe that with 2 or 3 key chess moves that we can do that quickly up front and then have flexibility in the rest of the triangle space for how that plays out. So instead of talking about this as a master plan, which makes it sound like we have all of the answers in 2 days, we're talking about this in terms of a framework plan to give you the tools that you need to unlock those first few key chess moves. And then the rest of it has a little bit more flexibility to evolve in response to the community, in response to the market, and in response to an appropriate timing. So what we have here is a sketch plan of kind of those big moves that talk about the land use areas, the street network and the connectivity that we believe can happen.
I think the other thing I'd say before we dive into the details of it is that this represents a response to everything that Peter and Mike just spoke about. And every move on this framework responds to at least one of those things, if not multiple. And so it was the panelists' job to make sure the moves we were doing here responded to as many of those goals as possible. Where we chose the streets to be, where we chose the green network, where we chose the connections, how we decided what stayed and when. Oh, thank you. Was all in a response to those goals that we came up with and that we heard from the stakeholders. And so as we go through each of these elements, we'll make those clear.
Okay, so I'm going to get started just walking us through some of those first key moves. One of the big things that we heard was realignment or potential realignment of Gordon Road. We do believe as a team that that is an important step that needs to happen. Already, one of the interesting things about the overall site is you have access, or at least potential access, on all 3 sides of it. So you've got Broad Street up along this side, Shreve on the west, and the trail on the south. So even though currently there's only 1.5 existing trails, one's kind of off-site, having that access to the trail, we think is important, and we want to improve that. So tapping into that is going to be a key aspect. But in terms of realignment of Gordon, we are proposing that it comes up to tie into Birch, in the existing Birch intersection that's already signalized, and then having a sort of secondary connection down in this area to help keep maximum porosity into the site. That's will be primarily vehicular connections, but also with enhanced pedestrian access along those as well. So thinking in terms of complete streets where you have the appropriate pedestrian connections and bike facilities as needed. The trail, just to kind of hit on all the connectivity elements, we're proposing to bring sort of a secondary loop trail into the site. So adding a new trail connection here that would be sort of at this edge of the RPA. That would allow you to have 2 main connection points here from the WNOD trail into the site. And then once you're on the site side, you can have multiple connections into the parcels themselves. And so rather than having a whole bunch of connections to the WNOD that would need the RPA mitigation, really focusing on those two and then that secondary access here. That then could also further connect into the site using the realigned streets, pop you all the way back out to Shreve. And if you wanted to hit the trail again headed north, then you could get into the planned Shreve Road multimodal infrastructure improvements there.
Sure, okay, I'll start to speak on this portion of it. And to expand on what Robert mentioned earlier, this name that we've come up with, a public services center. During our tour yesterday of the site and our conversations with stakeholders, we realized that the activities that are happening here, and we heard that the activities that are happening here are really critical to the city and are critical to be in close proximity to those residents that they're serving. The vehicle maintenance, sign shop, materials yard, and including the hypothermia shelter are all critical services. And so this is really a heart of our plan and a central piece of our plan. As you'll see later, as we talk about phasing, it is a catalyst for our plan. So we're showing, some acreage here that we feel is efficient or sufficient for that use, including the hypothermia shelter, and making sure that is really a phase one, and something I think something that also sets the tone, the character of it, and it's as mentioned previously, there is this industrial aspect to the site, but it's a welcoming industry. It's a people first. And so, we thought a lot about what are the ways that we can take this light industrial character and make sure that it says authenticity and that says people first. And I think we can do that here in the heart of the development. And that really begins to inform the rest of the development. I can keep going. It doesn't matter.
Also taking a look at the other portion of the city property, so you can see that it's kind of bifurcated by the street alignment. So the idea is that this portion of the site here could be utilized for affordable housing, supportive services. It has the frontage to Shreve Road. Really, that gives it a natural affiliation with the residential that is already on the other side of the street. Also has easy direct connection up to the metro and to the BRT. And by separating sort of the public facilities from a housing opportunity, gives you a little bit of flexibility with the timing of those individual uses. Obviously the building forms of those, but then also what partnerships you might enter into in order to make those happen. And we have more information about that further on in the presentation. Do you want to talk about this relationship up here?
Yeah, sure. So the piece in the center that's gray is identified in the plan as a centralized shared parking. And that's also has an option for an impound facility or other shared uses with the city. So in envisioning maybe a taller ground floor to allow for some of those other uses, but then something that could be used for all future development as well. So locating that central was important. The piece in red on the upper left portion, we're identifying as, this may be a little specific for a framework, but as auto retail, auto repair, and really that is the existing on-site small businesses that already bring value to the community, that this is an opportunity for them to be preserved and a place for that to happen. Just below the centralized share parking here in that area, we're showing multifamily residential And this could be market rate, this could be senior, this is a flexible use. But it is nice for many reasons, as it takes advantage of the greenway and the trail, and is, you know, an appropriate size for multiple types of multifamily. And then we're showing even more flexibility in the plan, and I think probably the most flexibility in the plan along the street, and calling this mixed use. And really, this is the most furthest out, you know, the most long range, because it would allow the existing businesses there to continue, and the market to determine what's best there.
I'll just touch on a couple other things back to the open space down here at the bottom. We see that as not only a transportation and recreation conduit through the site and between the trail and the site, but also really as an amenity for the Gordon Road Triangle itself, whether it is the facilities there having direct access to that open space, envisioning there could be views out of the break room to take advantage of that open space and really utilize that greenery for the benefits that provides. Also are proposing enhanced trailhead at this end. Right now, it's kind of a little bit of a squirrely hidden connection. And we think that that can be broadened and opened up to have a stronger relationship there. We've got additional slides to talk about that. But we really see this, there is the RPA that has to happen here, but we see that as a benefit, not a constraint to the site, so that you are utilizing that green space, taking advantage of that green space, and then letting that green space come out into the site even further for these open spaces.
It's really one of the most high value corners of the entire site. You know, a gateway into the site from the trail, but also this opportunity for, we're dubbing it a trail forward active retail component that could both be street facing and trail facing. So.
Right, this gets very pinched in dimension down at this end, so between the power line easements and RPA and the street and so forth, it just gets very pinched. But we see that as a benefit, as Colin was saying, that it's a place that maintains some of that smaller scale development and smaller scale building, so that you are kind of having that closer relationship with the trail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we could probably discuss this for quite a while. But we'll leave time for questions, obviously. So here in orange, we're showing as a phase one, both the Public Services Center and shelter and supportive services. Here, the affordable housing piece and supportive services, training, trade programs, incubator programs, all is phase one, along with an enhancement of this creek that is essentially aligned with the trail and begins to be the first piece of green enhancement along the trail. Phase two is it is really critical in receiving those on-site businesses that are already thriving, providing a place for those on-site thriving businesses to be. And that allows for, in a phase three, making the realignment of Gordon Row the final piece that brings it all together. Just some smaller enlarged detail about the Public Services Center. This is also flexible, and so we've left it vague and sketchy on purpose, and just really thought through spatial needs here and thinking about buffering, utilizing material yard and other uses to buffer from the concrete plant. We're showing a very heavy buffer here between the Public Services Center and the adjacent residential to the south. And really facing, as Susan said, those indoor, indoor functions closer to all the other amenities of the site. So that is really the worker facing, the employee facing piece of this. And I think what the plan is expressing.
Many of you are probably familiar with the new Arlington Art facility. If you haven't seen it yourself, you're probably aware that it has been completed. And so this was one element that was in our briefing book that we heard from the city. And we're just putting it back out there as what we think is a good idea to model some of those aspects after. We'll turn it over to the next one.
So Susan and Colin kind of gave you and talked to you about kind of that framework plan, and now we're going to kind of get into some of those elements of that plan. So in the information we got from the city and speaking with stakeholders, one of the questions was looking at, possible land uses. And one of the things we heard both from the city and the stakeholders is that there is a want for housing. And what we've heard is looking for mixed income housing to include affordable housing. So we definitely thought, again, looking at the framework plan and the opportunities here, there is an opportunity to provide housing, have higher density, mixed use residential along the Broad Street frontage of the property. And then we thought there's an opportunity, again, there's a lot of trans-oriented developments happening to the north of the site, closer to West Falls Metro Station. And we thought, again, as you step down from that development, you can have higher density along Broad Street, and then kind of stepping down towards the Public Services Center, and then to the residential development to the south. So we think there's an opportunity to even preserve some of the existing low intensity industrial buildings and find some uses. We talked about the term we use was tech flex, business incubators, makerspace. We think there are opportunities for those types of uses within the site. And as you transition to the more industrial uses with the Public Service Center. We also heard from a lot of folks that again there is existing homeless shelter, which is a hypothermia shelter. It's open. It's November through March or April. There seems to be a consensus of wanting to keep that within the triangle. So we think there's opportunity to maintain that. But from what we heard, there is a need to expand the site. Currently there are, I think it's a total of 12 beds, 10 for men, 2 for women. So one, it's expanding some to allow for more, and also to have more of a balance of beds for men and women. And also there's a need to modernize. So what we heard is, I guess right now the hypothermia shelter is actually on the 2nd floor of the building that it's located in, and it's actually not accessible for all people. So again, it needs to be accessible to all, in accordance with ADA requirements, and it needs to be modernized. We heard again, there's a dishwasher in the facility. I guess there have been issues with heating and cooling. So again, we think that can be done. We think that should be a priority with this. One of the things we heard was the existing tree canopy. There's not much existing tree canopy. So a major goal, and we think a major opportunity, is to increase the tree canopy within the triangle. So what our recommendation is, we recommend that for the overall triangles, the minimum tree canopy goal should be 15%. And we say that because we think there's a great opportunity because of the site's, location or proximity to the WNOD trail. and the RPA buffer area that's located there. We think that's an area you could get some, substantial tree planting to really, meet that 15% goal. We also think there's opportunity for additional tree plantings. Looking further about some of the transportation enhancements, pedestrian enhancements, frontage improvements, but we think with implementation of street trees and urban streetscape, again, that's opportunity for more tree canopy and green space within the sites. And as was mentioned earlier, again, just its location to the OND Trail is opportunities to really provide a great buffer to create open space and recreation activities for all users to the site. And this is just some precedent infrastructure, again, looking at some of the urban streetscape improvements that could be provided, showing landscape strips, showing bioretention, again, for sustainability, bioretention in those streetscape improvements. So again, as I've mentioned, W&OND Trail is just a major opportunity for this development. You've got a regional trail that extends from Arlington all the way up to Purcellville. So it's heavily used. I've done a lot of marathon training on this trail. I've gone through this area many times. And right now, the site has no relationship to the trail. You go out there, the only access points are, you talked about kind of that point along Broad Street, I guess near St. Falls Road, and then the Shreve Road connection. But along the triangle site, there's nothing. There's no relationship, there's fencing. We think there's a major opportunity to actually establish a relationship with the W&OND Trail. That includes, as was mentioned earlier, providing additional connections to the trail. We think there's opportunity to provide open space and passive and active recreation opportunities for employees, residents, and visitors to the site. But we have some pictures here. We think there's an example of providing that relationship with the trail is in Vienna. There's the Caboose Brewing Company. They have a brewery that's right on the trail, and that's become, a very destination. I know running groups, I know biking groups that you start there, you finish there, and again, just creates that relationship with the W&OND Trail. We also think there's an opportunity, as we talk about, preserving some of the existing buildings on the site to create that relationship. Here we have the Smokies Garage, which is located there on Broad Street, near that Broad Street, I guess we call it Point area. We think there's an opportunity, preserving the building, adaptive reuse of that building to create an opportunity, again, to create that relationship with the W&OND Trail. And again, Susan had talked about, again, that point. And because of the impacts of the power line easements, the RPA, it does limit opportunities in that site. But we think, again, there's an opportunity to kind of create that kind of retail trail presence. So this is just a kind of precedent showing that example.
All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about those transportation connections. We talked about a few with regards to the W&OD. This is sort of an overlay, and we'll use this picture again in later slides. So, but this is sort of the sketch out of how we can improve connectivity and make the whole site a little bit more porous and be more multimodal. But you go ahead. So talking on the W&OD, so some of the recommendations is to enhance that connectivity. We talked about adding the pedestrian and bike connection down here by the green gateway. So this would really be sort of a gateway into the site, a gathering space that would feed into that area. But that was one connection. Also, this area down here to improve this connection at the base of the bike ped bridge and really open that up. We spoke about the open space recreation opportunities that we could really get in here and do sort of a parallel, slower shared use path that you can exercise on. Because I know the dual paths over here, and maybe this stretch of the W&OD will get that, but it is an opportunity to provide some of that slower trail on the Gordon Road side of things. And we talked about the preserving of the buildings, so we can move on. So on Shreve Road, which is another important connection, there is a planned project for that roadway, and that's gonna be a 10-foot shared use path connection between the WNOD trail and up to the West Falls development and subsequently the metro. There was also recommendations that as this comes online and things start redeveloping, that we really activate the Shreve Road frontage to really enhance and utilize those streetscape improvements. And then on Gordon Road, as it is today, there's a lot of employees down in that area. We heard that it was not safe for them to be crossing Gordon Road. There's sightline issues. So really just wanting to make it more pedestrian friendly for those who are using it now. And I think, providing traffic calming there, especially near the operations center, is something that could be done relatively, near term, including a high visibility crosswalk, better delineation of those pedestrian zones and signage for drivers to expect pedestrians. The thought of using asphalt art, there was a lot of talk about murals and things like that in this area to really utilize some placemaking. That also provides a traffic calming because it creates a sense of place. And the more we can do that, if we can do it right down in there, that will help with traffic calming as well. Right. And then that street grid. Now this is going to be a longer term, so we talk about the phasing. But longer term, we can implement that grid of streets, respecting current ownership. So that's part of that phasing. When they're ready to move, that's when it can come online. Aligning Gordon Road and Birch Street to provide better connectivity, and all of which should provide better, wider sidewalks, bike facilities for all. And then on Broad Street, Broad Street is a challenge. It's, the walking along there can be, there's a lot of busy traffic, hard to cross conveniently. I think we mentioned that up during the constraints component of it, but here we're recommending making that temporary signalized crossing near the WNOD bridge permanent with a pedestrian activated signal and a high visibility crosswalk. We suggest adding a pedestrian activated signal between Birch and Falls to sort of allow some crossing over into the shopping center across the way between the signalized intersection and then the new, where the temporary crossing is now. Let's see, and then of course, implement those pedestrian safety improvements at the Broad Shreve intersection. Now, this is part of the current redevelopment that's going on at West Falls. It's an ongoing project. I know that they're working to refine and make it even more pedestrian friendly. So, moving that along and continuing to implement that will be huge. So that would really improve those crossing options. And then improving the streetscape is part of the redevelopment. It's beautiful, it's brick, there's trees and what have you, but we did hear a lot about the bricks being trip hazards, and even some of the tree boxes also, because they're elevated, being trip hazards. So, providing planting strip with a bioretention to really create those provide for healthy street trees so that you can create, the bioretention areas will have the trees, and then the sidewalk will be free and open, replacing the bricks to be more ADA compliant, and trying to reduce those curb cuts because there's a lot of conflict in there as redevelopment happens.
All right, guys, so based on what we've heard today throughout our conversation since yesterday, we realize there's a couple things that we want to focus on when it comes to public-private partnerships, especially financing it as well. We want to make sure that we're reducing our financial risks and reducing our liability to taxpayer in the city too, while ensuring that we maintain growth and really make sure that this vision comes to life. So 3 words that we want to focus on are envision, finance, and growth. So some of the financing strategies that we thought about were kind of a little bit in the alternative space. To really finance the city's ambition, we want to integrate these maker spaces like industrial uses, affordable and luxury housing, public services, parking, and green pathways to make sure it's a diversified and an innovative financing approach that leverages both conventional and alternative instruments. So some of the instruments that we really think that would help with this project would include zero coupon bonds, industrial revenue bonds,
and Islamic bonds and equity instruments. So what a zero coupon bond is, it's basically a bond issue that's discounted upfront and paid in full at maturity, which helps reduce the city's short-term cash outflows while securing long-term capital. And instead of using general obligation bonds, or known as GOs, we're going to use the IRBs to basically fund the industrial economic development projects without direct taxpayer liability. And instead of using an interest-based instrument, we're going to use asset-backed and interest-free bonds, which not only appeal to long-term investors within the GCC region, such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait, but also long-term investors such as the Japanese and Germans, who've actually done these projects right here in the DMP. Some examples that did use these financing methods include the City Center, the Wharf, a couple projects in Roslyn, and a couple other different projects within Tyson's Corner as well. Go ahead. Continuing on, we also see that using synthetic leasing for asset development is a really creative way to allow the city to control operational control over key infrastructure, whether it be public services building, the parking lot, and other industrial parts that we plan on keeping, while also keeping those assets off the balance sheet. This structure attracts private sector capital while optimizing tax benefits and reducing the impact on the city's debt capacity. And by creating this thriving mixed income community, we're able to garner a couple of other options when it comes to attainable housing. This allows for all income levels to live, grow, and work right here, and make this district a real destination for everyone. Some things such as a low-income housing tax credit, or LIHTC for short, incentivizes private investment and helps create high-quality housing that we're looking to support and really create a diverse and vibrant community. And by strengthening economic and social vitality, mixed income communities can foster neighborhood stability, enhancing the district's appeal as a place where businesses, families, and innovators can thrive. Falls Church has already done a pretty good job at doing that, and we want to continue that tradition going forward. And of course, workforce housing allows essential workers to really just live nearby the job centers and reinforce the city's vision as being inclusive and a dynamic hub. So a couple of steps moving forward. Step one, finalize the reinvestment vision. We want to define the city's long-term reinvestment strategy that really aligns with all the stakeholders involved, which helps create compelling presentation to showcase the plan. Step two, we want to engage our private and public partners. By connecting with capital placement firms who specialize in long-term investors, they reduce our risk, increase cash flows, and increase private participation. We also want to establish rapport with public partners, such as Fairfax County, State of Virginia, and other federal partners, to really create the impact that we're going for in the greater area. And to grow the triangle, so to speak, into a model district, by doing these things, we can make it a good catalyst for broader city investment and leverage our industrial, residential, commercial synergies that we already see. And by executing this plan, we can transition from vision to implementation with clear milestones and really align city policies, funding strategies, and development partners to create a successful public-private partnership. We'll see more what that looks like in a full report. And really at the end of the day, we want to ensure the city has a flexible, low-cost capital access and aligning with this long-term economic reinvestment. And now we'll talk about governance.
Great, thank you. Governance wasn't on the list of questions shown at the beginning, but we put it in as a section because we think it's something that's very important to pay attention to for a project this big and this complicated. And this is a tough site, that's why you have the tap in, but any property, because of the city ownership, the private sector ownership, the scattered sites, and it's pretty unique, having worked in a lot of places, to have an industrial area where so many sites are owner occupied. And it's a challenge because there's an opportunity because they're businesses in the community, they're invested in Falls Church's future, but it's also a challenge because they get value from the property as a location to run their business versus a redevelopment opportunity. And so that's why, sort of came up with this governance idea to help move the plan forward. The number of stakeholders, the fact that the boundaries are multi-jurisdictional, the importance of governance is to keep everyone rowing in the same direction. Next slide. So you need to have a quarterback. That we think having a point person to champion the project and be the go-to czar, the person people can go to with questions is important in moving this kind of projects forward. And this role, would lead the effort in the city, coordinate with Fairfax County, pull together the property owners. We think it's about half of an FTE, and either a staff or sometimes communities hire an outside contractor. It's a little bit like an owner's rep role. The nice thing about being a city staff member, as is in the precedent in Montgomery County, we have implementation managers working on implementing plans in White Flint and White Oak. I know the District of Columbia has also had a project manager devoted to implementing plans in some of their priority development areas. Isn't that person's, part of the government, accountable to the public, and versus an outside contractor. So something to think about. And last point on that slide is this person also really needs the full backing of the city manager and the city council to be empowered to go out and advance the plan and move the plans forward. Okay, next related to government is formalize an agreement with Fairfax County to advance the reinvestment in this area. We heard there's been a lot of positive relationship building recently. We think this plan is a great opportunity to continue that. We heard a little bit about annexation is maybe a process you don't want to go through. So absent that, having that conversation, rationalizing the densities across the site so that the developers and the property owners can come up with a plan that makes sense for their properties. And that corner of Broad and Tree is really an important corner as the gateway to downtown Falls Church, even though that property itself is in Fairfax County. And we think entering into an MOU or another kind of agreement can help formalize what the county and the city want from this area. And then also think about ways to keep the collaboration going, looking for other opportunities for shared facilities, other partnerships on other sides of the city. Number 3 is to convene a city working group to advance development of this new public service center. A lot of work has been done already, but based on the feedback we heard and the panels or look at what's been done so far, we encourage you to have another conversation about what facilities might make sense to locate on this site. We heard there may be a need for additional office space for some agencies. We looked at the Fox plan. There may be an opportunity to get a more reasonable cost estimate if it's a different kind of project that's done in a public-private partnership. So a private sector partner can go out and get the funding and the city would be a tenant. So something to think about. Go back up. And yeah, this working group should involve all the agencies that want space on the property, but also set up some clear procedures for making decisions. When there's trade-offs, what the final go point is, so that the working group doesn't get stuck. Next slide. And then, our last point related to governance is, again, have Jane Daniels, quarterback for Gordon Road, convene a working group of the property owners. This promotes private sector engagement in the future vision for the triangle. Regular meetings of these owners with the city demonstrates the city's commitment to moving this plan forward. It can coordinate individual plans for redevelopment, identify opportunities for sharing spaces, consolidations, and maybe even land swaps. And as we've said throughout, we want to support the existing businesses in the area, and so engaging with them regularly lets them know what's going on. And lastly, per the framework plans, we think there's an opportunity for some shared parking on the site. We heard that in a lot of our conversations. And so a key task for this group early on would be conducting a needs assessment to understand what parking is needed for the auto dealerships, the repair places, the customers who come to various businesses, what the city's needs are for their staff and fleet parking, and how can we develop a garage that serves those needs and then opens up opportunities for other redevelopment on the site. I think we hadn't, Robert is doing it, so
Yeah.
we ran out of time for deciding who's gonna do the slide.
So since I'm really technically incompetent, if you just stay there and push the button.
I didn't plan on moving.
Okay, so push the button. Okay, so this is just an example of something that's going to be included in the final report. It's an implementation matrix. So there's recommendations that are buried all the way through our presentation and the ultimate report. And we want to have all of that in one place so you can get a very clear understanding of what specific steps we think need to happen to realize this. And understanding that not all of this stuff is going to happen all the time or instantaneously. I don't think we have a magic wand that's that big. You know, they have to be a big one. But, you know, this would be, you know, again, you'll have something like this to fall back on. But as I said so clumsily, there's six, but key takeaways. First one is protect and maintain existing operations and businesses, you know, to the extent possible as, you know, and then when development occurs, again, keep them in mind. Leverage the city-owned properties as a catalyst that provides for the long-term needs for the city. Now, in that case, we think if you do, you know, a really, really world-class public services center, that's going to set the tone. That's going to give investors confidence that positive change can occur and will occur in the Gordon Road Trust. We've been having trouble with that. Okay. The next thing is conduct a programming and feasibility study to define the scope of work for the PSC. And we know that you know, from the previous study that was done, that, you know, they were talking about some big numbers, but we went through and did some kind of back of the envelope calculations. And then looking at it, so the site on the east side of Gordon Road, that's roughly 120,000 square foot site. So to give you a sense of perspective, a standard office building, which is maybe 120 by 240 or 250, that's a 24 to 30,000 square foot floor plate. So you start putting something like that, or even two of those side by side on 120,000 square feet, you still have comfortable areas for circulation. And there's a lot of different ways that can be configured, but we also think that we really need to get a better handle on what needs or wants to go into that facility, because, you know, it's possible it could be, you know, maintenance, storage, first floor, couple levels of parking, and then 2 or 3 levels of office space and space for city employees that are working at the yard. Okay, obviously introducing more green space as a buffer. I mean, it doesn't look like the Vulcan plant's going anywhere anytime soon. So we do think that by introducing buffers adjacent to that site, that we can mitigate its impacts, at least in the near to midterm, and then we'll see what happens with it long term. But you need to have, especially for the portion of your properties that face onto Shreve Road, you need to have something there that is a visual separation. Because otherwise, if you do that, the value of the property is going to go up a bunch. And then the partner with Fairfax County and the private owners, partnership's really important. And we said, you know, this, in a lot of ways, the effective site here is bifurcated by the city-county boundary line. But we think, and we heard in the stakeholders meetings, that there was a lot of interest in encouraging additional coordination and you know, common purpose between the jurisdictions. And we also heard that there's a lot of interest on part of at least a couple of the larger landowners in working with the city to go forward if they can see a vision that they feel comfortable with. And then the last thing is, and we just talked about it, is the implementation manager. And you gotta have somebody who has ownership. That's gonna be pushing to get things done. Because otherwise it just, kind of fades off and nothing happens. So, and having support of the council, the manager, the hierarchy in the city to help push things through is absolutely critical to that. So with that, we're gonna, we appreciate you all being so patient and holding your questions, because I would suspect there's going to be at least two until now. So we'd like to open it up for questions. And again, thank all of you and thank the city especially for everything you've done for us the last couple of days. And then also Mark Gaza, who's in the back. And then also this team, because I've done a bunch of tasks over the years. This is one of the best teams I've ever worked with. So, and they pay me to say that. So, question number one. Okay.
Just move through the financing piece pretty quickly. Were there any financing mechanisms in there that did not require backing by the city? Talked a lot about bonds. You had the Islamic general obligation as well as the industrial revenue bonds. Was there anything that did not require backing by the city?
On most of those bond instruments, and you can back me up on this, is they don't really require, they don't go to the city's bonding capacity. It's kind of off books. So that, and to give you an example, Nature Conservancy building on Fairfax Drive in Arlington. Okay, so they came in, they're 501c3. They don't want to, it's a volunteer, it's a contribution membership organization. They didn't want anybody seeing they have a big real estate debt for a nice new shiny building on their bottom line. So Folger Pratt came in as a developer. The county issued industrial revenue bonds. At the end of the term of those bonds, I think it was like 15 or 20 years, they were paid off earlier. But at that point in time, then the asset came to Nature Conservancy. And I think that they may have actually just owned the land and they put that in as part of the equity, but I wouldn't swear to that because that was 30 years ago and I'm old, my memory's rubbish.
But that still requires either the EDA or the city to issue the bonds. Or
the EDA, yes, would be issuing the bonds, but it's not quite the same structure as if you're doing general obligation bonds. Next, there's got to be another question. Unless we just nailed it back to
that detail.
I have a question on your framework plan. Would you please go back to that, the colorful rendering? So one question is how, it's too far away, I can't see the acreage. So what's the acreage of this, like a light blue, dark blue, or yellow? What's the reason or assumption?
Oh,
divided as.
This is kind of a placeholder. It's not saying this is exactly what it's going to be long term. But we do have square footages for each one of these properties. And I think one of the things that's important, and we alluded to it, is we've really tried to respect the property lines. So if, somebody, is going to need to have a new road, they're not getting their ox scored by, giving up something that goes through the middle of the property that makes it unserviceable. And there's actually a mechanism called reservation density. So if they do provide right of way, that they can reserve that space as even though it's now in public ownership, they can still use that to calculate density.
Yeah, I understand you're trying to follow the existing property line over there. Do you thinking, is there any possibility to do a land assembly somehow?
Well, I think that's what we're talking about. In governance, we're saying, let's get the property owners or use the city as and maybe the new project manager as implementer to pull the property ownerships together and see if there isn't some way to work out a common approach going forward with all, or as many of the property owners as you can get. It's just gonna be just talking it through.
And one thing that I will also add, we won't slip all the way back to the property ownership diagram, but these two blue, this is current city land, so that would stay as is for those uses. The affordable housing, whether that's a ground lease or a land swap or selling it off or what have you. But this is the current city land here. This portion of the site in this area is under 2 ownerships right now. So this is the most consolidated portion of the site today. And so that's why we were focusing on the phasing diagram as kind of this being one of the, like, phase 2 could happen more quickly up here. And then this portion of the site has more variety of parcel ownership down here. And that's why we're saying that the maximum flexibility in the ultimate land forms and development patterns down here to help react and respond to the smaller parcels and the need for, you know, that to happen more organically, potentially.
Oh, and talk about the changing the impound lot. Okay, so, you know, currently on that little triangle there,
This one.
that's kind of used as the police's impound lot. The problem with it is it's not secure. It's difficult for them to maintain chain of evidence. So what we're thinking of, if we do new public services center, and there's, you know, part of that is level to a parking, then there could be an area that can be blocked off specifically for that purpose. And then the recycling center, which right now is, everything we hear is it's kind of dysfunctional, you know, in terms of access and whatnot. But we feel like that piece of property there gives a great place for the recycling center to go and be able to really work and make it a lot easier for the citizens of Falls Church to do the right environmental thing. Yes?
Any thoughts about that leftover piece that has the little blue thing in the middle? That's the piece the city owns next to the concrete plants.
That's what we were just talking about.
The future of that blank area, there are several lots along Shreve Road.
Oh, this bit.
Yeah, you see the green circle?
Oh,
There's Shreve Road comes down and there are
got it.
2 old houses. They're part of Fairfax County. We have the impound lot ourselves. And then the concrete plant. Any long-term thoughts about what kind of partnership might be able to do something with Fairfax County there?
Yeah.
And the longer term, let's make better use of this key property right next to the trail.
I think that's something that could be an outgrowth of, you know, future discussions between the city and the county. As far as our scope went, thank you. That was really kind of like a little bit of a bridge too far. I mean, we had 2 days.
Well, it's the same issue at the top.
Yeah. Andrew?
Great job, and thank you so much for just giving some thoughts to all these things. One, do you have a recommended, like the West Broad Small Area Plan, I think recommends a 3.0 in this area as far as density. Any recommended densities? Because we heard that at our table yesterday. That's one question. The second question is, can you clarify right at the corner where it's red, but also all the way up to Shreve? It looks like you're designating that for auto repair and automotive uses and things like that for the existing dealerships. Is that the long-term plan for that area? What are your general thoughts?
You know, this is all going to evolve, you know, over time. And a lot of it's going to depend on what those operators and those owners want to do going forward. For right now, it seems to make sense. You know, but every plan is evolutionary. You know, there's no plan, no matter what some planners talk to you about, that's static, that it's going to always end up like that. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, this will evolve. And there was a second part of your question.
Recommended densities
in the
The
triangle?
3.0, you know, that's basically the underlying density in Clarendon. To give you a sense of perspective on it or an example. And there's ways to get that up to a 4 for residential development. So that would be a discussion that I think the city needs to have going forward. 3 is a good number. If you ask a developer, it's 6 is better. You know, that's just it. So.
So I appreciate some of the changes made to the transportation, moving the roads. I think is huge, but one thing that jumps out at me is the retention of the cut through on Gordon between the two city-owned properties. So I wanted to understand your thoughts in retaining the road between the two properties. Obviously, it needs to still come into the concrete plant. But you already have a second, you're putting in a new road. What was the thinking beside with retaining that portion of Gordon instead of making it this division of use? And a quick second question was engagement with Nova Parks about the trail.
Obviously, that has to happen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a given. And I think that's kind of Sonia's.
Yeah, do you want me to say something?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm getting tired of talking.
I'll take this, sure. I think we did talk about the cut through issue. We had a few different iterations of what this looked like. I think this road was because we have to give access to the public facilities and the housing here. And the uses down in here as well. You know, but we actually, we sort of teed this off, so it was more square. I like the little roundabout because I thought this would keep things flowing, but I think you have different options. This isn't gonna be as easy of a cut through because it's gonna be sort of redesigned, slower speeds, you're gonna have more activity, and I think you're gonna have more options because you'll have a point at Shreve here, a point at Shreve here, because we were sort of thinking in the future that this could be a connection through whatever happens up in this area as well. But all of this has to be designed to be a slower residential type street that would deter people from swinging in through here. But we definitely discussed that, and I think a lot of that can come out in the design and as things evolve.
Yeah, plus the site's big enough that you're gonna need to have multiple frontages just to make the site marketable. You know, so what's shown there isn't, you know, it's a little bit bigger than like, say, a city block downtown, which is roughly 2 acres, you know, 90,000 square feet, some places. So that gives you kind of, again, a perspective on what's out there. So yeah, it definitely, when it comes in and gets designed, I think you'll maybe see some evolution, but we also didn't see a way to lose that amount of connectivity.
And I would also add that, you know, the Grid of Streets is gonna help with walkability, bikeability, and just sort of dispersing some of that traffic. You know, and I hope, you know, as everything sort of evolves and redevelops, you know, the traffic patterns are gonna shift a little bit as these uses change. But I also wanted to note that this is gonna be a trail connectivity point as well. So you're gonna have a lot of people on bikes and walking coming into this, so it's gonna have to be designed in a way that is supportive of those modes for sure.
You know, operationally, we're trying to separate any light industrial traffic so that it happens on the backside and utilizes this, and this is reserved for residential, retail, commercial, all of those other uses.
Yeah, I was just wondering why it had to go all the way through.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is trying to separate that industrial traffic, keep that separate.
There was another question in the back.
Yeah, fun. I'm really excited about the public services building. Thank you for the presentation. And it sounds like we have a lot of things we want to cram in there already, and maybe not enough space. So just maybe I'll have one more on the list. DC Water has this incredible building on waterfront.
Right.
In Navy Yard, it has this beautiful event space. Weddings and all sorts of things. So I mean, I would love to, if we could. fit
Okay,
something
just
like
double
that.
the price of the property.
That's
I'm just kidding, it's ambitious, but
That's-
it's like a Falls Church version of that you could contemplate?
I think, you know, like the ART building that was shown,
Yeah,
there could be elements of the DC water building that, you know, in terms of the, you know, public gathering space that goes in.
exactly.
That's something that we need to look at when when it gets programmed to see what kind of actually fits there and is gonna be comfortable. So that, sir,
My same thought was along those lines, is those of us at the neighborhood amenities table, you know, have a lot of discussions about an aquatic center in that area, and it seems to me if it's not mentioned in the beginning, it's hard to be put in at the end, so it's always something that seems to be cut out, but, you know, when you're talking about what the community needs and needs to get out of this, community needs to get something out of this other than a place to sit down and eat and, you know, bike along, whereas an aquatic center benefits the high school, benefits the whole citizens on themselves, not just on this part of the city, but on the other part of the city that's about there. So, I mean, it was a big part of our table, a big part of the discussion, a little bit sad not to see it even mentioned in this process.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And we'll look at that as we're preparing the final report. But that's the sort of, you know, citywide use that I think it's worthy of, it's an independent study to see, okay, is this the right place? Is someplace else the right place? I mean, those things are really expensive. So how does that work? You know, but I mean, that's a big discussion.
Absolutely, and but, you know, as we develop, there's not many more places in the city, and this is city-owned property, whereas the thought of buying a piece of property where you can put it in is out of, don't have anybody's knowledge or thought, whereas this is city-owned, can be put here without the cost of acquiring the land. So it just should be on the list of, you did have it, you know, what's going to be in this new public service building, should be at least on the list of what should or can be considered. Because again, it's hard to put it in after the bottle's capped.
Yeah. And actually, what I think would be helpful, you know, we're gonna, I guess, Mark, we give them Mark. Okay, so we'll give you a link to do follow-on questions. So aquatic center can be a lot of different things, like the one Arlington just built that was gold plated. Is, you know, that's one thing. If it's a community pool in with a YMCA, that's something else.
Sure.
So if we could get some idea, if you could follow on with some ideas of, you know, what it is that you're looking for, that helps focus.
I used the word farm pool at the table, and somebody else came up with aquatic center, and it sounded like a much better idea than that people, so I switched my mind from.
Well, see, I see something with water and like lily pads and, you know, something like that. Any additional questions? Well, thank you all very, very much. We've really had a blast doing this. This has been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let everybody go. Mayor Hardy, I don't know if you'd like to come up and just say a word or two. You'll get the last word. We're standing between you and happy hour, so we're gonna be real short. But I just want to say to our panel, I want to thank each of you all individually, Robert, Susan, Peter, Ishmam, Sonia, St. Clair, Mike, and Carrie and Colin, and our writer, Rebecca. We're all counting on you. Emily Bazemore is our staff lead, superstar. Way to go, Emily. Yeah. When we first met as a panel, everyone's introduction was their degrees of separation to Jim Snyder. It was all 1 degree of separation. Jim's in the back. And we also have Lauren Bruce, who led the famous technical assistance panel of 10 years ago that resulted in the West End project. Lauren, great to see you back. Mark, you've been awesome to work with. I would just say, I think we're processing this right in real time. We had very high expectations for this technical assistance panel, and I think you all have exceeded those expectations. We're really grateful for your perspective and for your energy and your innovation. A lot of great ideas here, and we're going to take the ball now
and see where we run with it. But thank you all very much. Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna echo that because I am keeping you from happy hour. So I was actually gonna mention that it was over 10 years ago that ULI had done one of our first taps. It really catalyzed that amazing project that is now a reality. So you all clearly brought your game here. And so we are so grateful for the expertise. I think we are seeing how fruitful that project has turned out to be. And so thank you for your time. We have other members of City Council that I want to briefly recognize on behalf of Justine Underhill and Laura Downs. We also have members of the Planning Commission. We have Chair Andrea Comont, Timmy Stevens, Aaron Krasner. Oh, Mary Beth Connolly, also here. Sorry, I didn't see you. So thank you, because we are really, again, grateful for all the brain power and expertise and just the regional collaboration that you're bringing to Falls Church.
Thank you.